So first, I like to give a general answer that why anyone should do a professional course. I'll say go for CFA unless you are extremely sure of your interest in risk management.
तो कॉलेज में इट डज हेल्प हैविंग एन एफआरएम डिग्री बिकॉज इट ये ऐसा नहीं है कि तुम जस्ट इंटरव्यू में जाके बोल दो कि मुझे फाइनेंस में इंटरेस्ट है बट यू डोंट हैव एनी टैंजिबल थिंग टू शो।
मतलब अगर कोई बच्चा अभी 12th में आ रहा है, मतलब 12th से कॉलेज में आ रहा है, तो वो कैसे सोचे कि मैं पहले एफआरएम करूं कि उसकी एलिजिबिलिटी कम है या फिर मैं बाद में करूं?
Might be about option valuation or how interest rates move, how interest rates impact fixed income securities.
And uska duration of the exam is 4 hours. There are 100 MCQs and there is no negative marking. I started studying actively 3 months before the exams with 3 to 4 hours every day. Level 2 is more of rote learning, regulations, frameworks. Still can be managed without coaching.
Hi everyone, this is Nishtha and welcome back to the channel. आप लोग का CFA वाली वीडियो पे काफी अच्छा रिस्पॉन्स आया था and many of you requested a video, similar video for FRM as well. And for that I have my friends Sparsh, Ayush, and Palika here. All right, so starting off with what motivated you to pick FRM, because we're already studying finance as a part of our curriculum in BBFIA, and then we also have the option of pursuing CFA. So what led you to FRM, and how did you decide that you want to pursue both levels alongside graduation?
Sure. So first, I like to give a general answer that why anyone should do a professional course. So if you see, if you are studying in college, especially in Delhi University, the load of the coursework itself is very light. So even if you start studying 15 to 20 days before the examination, you can manage to get decent grades. You know that in our college, everybody did this and everyone is getting 8, 8.5, right? So the first thing was this, I had a lot of free time, which I wanted to use productively. Hence, I decided that I wanted to do a professional course. Now, for a commerce student, there are a few options available, right? So I'll just list them down quickly and tell you what my thought process was. So first bucket, I would like to put 3 degrees together, CA, CS, and ICMA, right? So the thing I did not opt for these is because I was not interested in tax, law, and audit. This did not appeal to me. Plus, the step to becoming one of these is a very long process, right? So you have to do an articleship, which lasts for 2 years. So before college, you won't be able to get the degree or clear the examination, right? So this is why these three I did not opt for. The second bucket I would like to put is finance certifications, which are CFA and FRM. So I, first of all, intuitively, I found the curriculum to be very interesting. So now in 11 and 12, you might have studied economics, mathematics, statistics, right? So if you just read the subjects, you'll understand some portions of it if you're a commerce student. Then you can intuitively see whether you are interested, are you liking it or not. So I was particularly intrigued by words like credit risk, market risk, and so on. So I found these to be interesting. So I explored these two in detail. Now, during my time, I was not eligible to give CFA. Hence, I opted for FRM. So this is the thought process I followed. So just to summarize, first of all, you have a lot of free time, how to use that productively. Second, browse through all the available options to you relevant to your stream. One more thing I'd like to add, I also explored actuarial science as a career option. And one advice I'd like to give you, whenever going through an option, go in depth. So for instance, I actually watched the first 2 to 3 lectures of actuarial science, like the starting subjects, to see if I had an interest or not. So yeah, this is how I decided I want to do FRM.
Right. Makes sense, because this was aligning with our subjects as well and your interest, and given you were eligible also for the certification. So can you give a very brief outline कि FRM में पढ़ते क्या है? जैसे CFA is like more of broader चीज है, but FRM is a specialized course in risk management. So can you give a like brief description कि क्या पढ़ते हैं, किसको किस चीज में इंटरेस्ट होना चाहिए कि वो FRM करे?
Okay, so there's one fundamental difference जो CFA और FRM में है कि CFA is a much more broader course than FRM. FRM is more थोड़ा scope कम है उसका, but they go in very depth in those topics, particularly risk management topics. If I compare CFA L1 and FRM Part 1, they are quite similar. The 40-50% syllabus is same. You cover quantitative methods like bits, basic statistics, and then you go on to options, derivatives. So those topics are similar, but when you move into FRM part two, those topics get much more, the scope gets much more narrower to risk management, and you specifically cover types of various risks like credit risk, market risk, liquidity risk, and they are all covered in depth and have a much more quantitative aspect to it. Uh,
Hmm.
in terms of CFA, it's more of broad investment, covering investment related topics like portfolio management, alternative investments, or equity derivatives. But in terms of FRM, it's very much inclined to risk management. And if someone is thinking of whether to give CFA or FRM first, I would suggest if a person wants to build a career in risk management, where they are working with banks to have the risk models covered, where they can minimize those risks, and uh, this basic finance concept that you maximize return and minimize risk. So there you have various quantitative models to do those, and FRM particularly goes very deep in those, particularly in part two level. So I would
Hmm.
suggest if one wants to build a career in risk management where you are working with investment banks, for example, you could say JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs, where you were working in the risk management department, that's where you could start with FRM. But if you are not much clear about which finance field particularly you want to go, you could go also for CFA first as well.
Right. Makes sense. Makes sense. For anyone who's new to the concept of FRM, can you briefly share कि क्या पढ़ते हैं, किस टाइप का एग्जाम होता है, MCQ सब्जेक्टिव, कितने MCQ, क्या ड्यूरेशन रहती है, थोड़ी बहुत डिटेल्स फॉर एनीवन हु इज न्यू टू द एग्जाम.
Okay, so firstly, like FRM level 1 has 4 books, and uska duration of the exam is 4 hours. There are 100 MCQs, and there is no negative marking. For level 2, there are 5 books, and again, the exam is for 4 hours, but there are 80 MCQs in this paper. Each MCQ has 4 choices, so that is the pattern of the paper.
राइट. एंड कैन यू ब्रीफली टेल कि क्या सब्जेक्ट्स पढ़ते हैं, मतलब अगर 2-3 नाम बता दे तो जिससे जिसको इंटरेस्ट, किसी को पता लग जाए कि उसको इन सब्जेक्ट्स में इंटरेस्ट है या नहीं, थोड़े बहुत सब्जेक्ट्स जो लेवल 1 या लेवल 2 में यू मस्ट हैव स्टडीड.
So, right. So, talking about level 1. So, first you study Foundations of Risk Management. That is the first book. Then you go into quantitative analysis, which is mostly statistics. Like in college, if you have statistics as a subject, most of your readings would be covered off for book 2. Book 3 is financial markets and products, which would include swaps, bonds, equity, options, option trading strategies. And then fourth would be valuation and risk models, so it would be more quantitative. And it's the level 2 is very much focused into frameworks and regulations of risk management, how to quantify risk, current issues in the risk management industry. So that is the overview of what level 1 and level 2 covers.
राइट. सो अगर पहले ने जो सब्जेक्ट्स बोले, जो टॉपिक्स बोले, दे साउंड इंटरेस्टिंग टू यू, देन यू मस्ट कंसिडर FRM एज अ सर्टिफिकेशन, क्योंकि यू विल गेट अ डीप डाइव इनटू दीस सब्जेक्ट्स, एज आई थिंक द सिलेबस इज very rich in covering risk management. But if someone were to decide today, given ki CFA ki eligibility has been pushed back to people appearing for the exam in the second year as well, so what is your take on CFA versus FRM?
See, I won't be diplomatic with anyone. I'll say go for CFA unless you are extremely sure of your interest in risk management. Now, the reason why I say this is CFA as a degree is much more recognized than FRM, right? The only reason I and a lot of my friends opted for the FRM exam is because we were not eligible. But now this has changed. So I would highly encourage you to opt for CFA. And I'll give you additional reasons also. FRM as a degree is very niche, right? It focuses on one aspect, whereas CFA is much broader. You will still be eligible for the same jobs if you have a CFA, but it might not be the other way around, right? That if you have an FRM, you might not be eligible for some jobs. So hence, I feel CFA gives you a broader opportunities.
Understood. ठीक है. स्पर्श, you said कि FRM की eligibility कम थी, इसलिए you preferred FRM, but since it is a very niche certification, so many people might also prefer doing it after CFA, कि मतलब पहले CFA कर लेते हैं, and then if they're interested in risk management, तो फिर FRM कर ले. तो डू यू थिंक कि वो करना चाहिए, या फिर मतलब अगर कोई बच्चा अभी 12th में आ रहा है, मतलब 12th से कॉलेज में आ रहा है, तो वो कैसे सोचे कि मैं पहले एफआरएम करूं कि उसकी एलिजिबिलिटी कम है, या फिर मैं बाद में करूं, मतलब हाउ शुड वन डिसाइड?
अगेन थोड़ा इंटरेस्ट पे डिपेंड करता है, बिकॉज CFA जितना मैंने आई हैव heard of CFA from my friends and other people who have done CFA is that it is बहुत broad horizon है CFA का. They cover a lot of different topics than FRM would in even in the part 1 or part 2. But again FRM बहुत ज़्यादा deep में है syllabus उसका. तो अगर if a person is very clear that he wants to go in risk management, then he should go for FRM first. Otherwise he can go for CFA. बेसिकली इफ अगर एक एडवांटेज एफआरएम में ये होता है कि विद इन कॉलेज यू कैन कवर बोथ द पार्ट्स. सो और विद सीएफए यू नीड टू you maximum you could give 2 levels in the college, and then the third level you have to give after your graduation. So it does show that कि तुमने FRM complete कर दिया. एक self satisfaction होती है कि एक particular certificate तुमने complete कर लिया है, and then when you go for CFA you have covered almost 40-50% syllabus. So you can easily go through the syllabus of CFA and then give the level 1 level 2 of CFA easily.
राइट राइट, ठीक है. अलोंगसाइड ग्रेजुएशन यू सेड कि पहले से दिमाग में था कि एफआरएम करनी है, तो कितने मंथ्स डिड यू डिवोट टू योर प्रिपरेशन फॉर लेवल 1 एंड लेवल 2? एंड इन मंथ्स में भी डिड यू set a fixed number of hours daily, या you used to cover the portion on weekends, या what was your strategy कि कैसे prepare करना है for both the levels?
Okay, so I took a coaching from Pratham, and it was like a live session thing because I thought that I would not be able to maintain regularity and everything. So I had my classes on weekends, and like I started 6 months pehle because I wanted to get the hang of the college as well. We have societies, recruitments, a lot going on in the college itself. So I took that much time, but I didn't study like quite consistently in the beginning. I just focused on grasping the concepts and attending the classes regularly. I started studying actively 3 months before the exams with 3 to 4 hours every day, and then the time devotion increased towards the end. Like last 10 days, I was completely studying FRM like pura then. And matlab, you need to put in hours and depends on the material. Like if you have taken Ashwini Bajaj or any other coaching which has video recordings and have decided to go through all the recordings, I would suggest start 4 to 5 months in advance so that you can cover the videos. And even if you watch the videos, you need to give a reading to the chapter uh, to understand it in a better manner. And you require at least 2 revisions even after completing the syllabus. So even if you don't decide to take the video recordings and everything, 3 months though you require. And it also depends upon how much financial knowledge you have like already, or is it being covered in your curriculum. Like for me, I started in my second semester and we already had studied statistics, which covered the book number 2, right? And we had basics of finance as well, like CAPM, arbitrage model, and everything. So it really helped me with FRM. So you also need to take into consideration how much you have already covered in your undergraduation, or if you're completely new to the subject, you'll have to take in more time.
राइट, मेक सेंस. एंड एज यू सेड कि कोचिंग वर्सेस सेल्फ स्टडी में थोड़ा डिफरेंस रहता है स्ट्रैटेजी में. बट अगर किसी को कोचिंग नहीं लेनी बिकॉज ऑलरेडी द एग्जाम इज वेरी एक्सपेंसिव, तो अगर किसी को एडिशनल इन्वेस्टमेंट नहीं करनी, तो डू यू थिंक द मटेरियल दैट वी गेट ऑन रजिस्टरिंग फॉर द एग्जाम, या फिर जो श्वेजर नोट्स करके काफी फेमस है, डू यू थिंक कि ये सफिशिएंट है, या वन शुड और शुड नॉट प्रेफर फॉर कोचिंग, वो कैसे डिसाइड करें?
So the exam focuses on conceptual clarity. So in the exam, the questions will really be based on the foundation of the concept, and if you're not aware of the concept, you won't be able to answer the questions. So it's very important that you understand the concept, especially in FRM level 1, which is very conceptual, like options, swaps. You are being introduced to a variety of new concepts. Level 2 is more of rote learning, regulations, frameworks, still can be managed without coaching. And I didn't take coaching for that. For level 1, I would suggest to have like access to some videos or a teacher at your college if you're not looking for any coaching, so that they can help you clear your concepts Especially people face issues with swaps, bonds, and option strategies and basics of options. So these are the 3-4 topics you might face difficulty in, and you might need some person in the finance industry or your teachers to guide you through it. And Schwezer notes is quite crisp. So sometimes the explanation is quite short and you might not grasp the concept completely. And I would suggest for that, go through the GARP books. So when you'll register at GARP for the exam, you'll get access to the ebooks. And those are very helpful. They go in depth of many concepts and give examples to explain the concept. So I referred to GARP for bonds and durations. So it was quite helpful. So I would surely suggest that if you can't get your concepts through Shrezer, refer to GARP and take some external help. It's always helpful to have some video reference for most of the concepts.
All right, ठीक है. तो मतलब whatever is your background, whatever access you have to resources, अगर college में professors है, जैसे we have derivatives के professors in college, many colleges do not even offer this subject. So depending on that, you should see कि what works for you and then finally decide कि coaching necessary होगी या नहीं. Right. Okay, Palika, since you said कि FRM काफी major investment है, which shows कि तुम interested हो finance में, but is there a way to finance this certification through any resources? Because we have scholarships for CFA, but is there any way कि we can sponsor our FRM attempts as well?
So, like official sources talking about GAR, they have a concept of academic partners. So they have partnered with a few organizations, like few educational institutions, which provide degrees in risk management specifically. So they have a nominee system, like each institute nominates 5 to 6 students and one faculty, and only the enrollment fee is waived off for those people. For like normal students like us, it's very difficult to finance this certification, unlike CFA. So it's a bit difficult to get scholarship. If there is another source, unofficial source, I'm not aware of that. But officially, GARP offers scholarship only to associated partners.
Right. And do we have undergraduate institutions in those partner universities as well, या वो postgrad institutions?
Mostly post graduations, because courses in risk management are majorly at post graduation level. And I don't think in India they have many institutes. I think only one or two, hardly any.
Right, right, ठीक है. Now coming on to you cleared FRM, ठीक है, level 1, level 2. How has it helped in you navigating your college life? मतलब कहीं भी help हुई हो internships में, placements में, किसी भी interview में, कहीं भी did you see a direct connection of like a benefit you derived out of getting these certifications?
So मैं इसे थोड़ा ब्रेक करके समझाता हूँ. तो सो कॉलेज में it does help having an FRM degree, because our course itself is very finance oriented. So there were a lot of topics because of FRM I could understand very easily and could go through quickly. So that saved my time in my college of going through same topics again and again. Plus, during internship season, it did help getting, I think, about shortlist for some of the finance companies, for example, DShaw or FTI Consulting.
FTA.
So yes, yeah. So it did help in get me shortlist there, as well as. So during interviews also, the interviewers used to ask about my FRM certification and what all you studied, because they were quite interested, and it does show that you are very oriented towards finance. That it is just it ये ऐसा नहीं है कि तुम जस्ट इंटरव्यू में जाके बोल दो कि मुझे फाइनेंस में इंटरेस्ट है, बट यू डोंट हैव एनी tangible thing to show. So having those certificates does help in convincing the interviewer that you are particularly interested about this particular field and shows your interest for the job. So it does help in particularly finance companies, but in my case, it also helped in my consulting interviews as well, where I interviewed for McKinsey. So in the first round, they asked a few questions related to finance and economics, because I was interviewing for the financial institutions group in consulting. So it did help me to go through those questions easily and answer them. And in the final round as well, they were quite interested about knowing how and when I started with FRM. So it
Hmm.
did show that interviewers were interested in those certificates.
Right, right. ठीक है. And if you are devoting इतना ज़्यादा time to some certification and you say कि you are interested in finance, तो एक तरह से you give a talking point that is also your strength in the interview. तो तुम interview को फिर उस direction में लेके जा सकते हो if you're really passionate about risk management and finance. तो वो भी तुम्हें एक edge दे देता है interview. Right, ठीक है. Ayush, lastly, many people might not know about the concept of a charter, earning the charter after FRM. So, can you briefly share if that might be an motivating factor for anyone to pursue FRM?
Okay, okay. So this you should be very clear about. The path to becoming a FRM, which is a financial risk manager, is there are two levels you have to clear: FRM Part 1 and FRM Part 2. So there is no eligibility criteria. You can give it whenever you want, although it is preferred that you do it, you don't take it earlier than first year of college, right? Like at least complete school, then you can enroll for FRM Part 1. Now, after giving Part 1, you have to complete Part 2 within 4 years of clearing Part 1. So this is a rule by the institute. And I think you don't even need 4 years. You can easily prepare for 6 months and then give Part 2, right? So there's a gap of 6 months between Part 1 and Part 2, and 6 months you'll also put in for studying for Part 1. So in whole of 1 year, you can clear both exams, both parts of the exam, right? So the next step to getting your charter or using the FRM designation with your name is having 2 years of relevant work experience. So what the institute mandates is after you clear both exams, you need to find a job where you will practically apply the concepts you've learned in the FRM. So it could be in a bank, it could be in a hedge fund, it could be in a financial services or company like EY, Deloitte, and so on, wherever it is relevant, the FRM knowledge you've gained. So post 2 years of work experience, you get your charter and you become a certified FRM.
So, within clearing, like, is there a time limit as to second level के कितने time limit तक you have to gain that relevant 2 years of work experience?
Right. So 5 years after clearing the second level, you need to get 2 years of work experience. So
And
in a
then,
sense, if you see after clearing the second level, you have a 3-year grace period, okay, to find a job, to complete college, whatever. But uske baad you need to do 2 years of work experience.
and then you can attach the FRM designation before your name, just like you do with
Correct,
CA
correct,
and
correct.
other
Correct, correct.
certifications.
Although just one
Alright.
thing I'd like to add,
Yeah.
So see, the designation in itself is not very important, right? Those three letters beside your name. I think what is more important is the knowledge and the skills you gain from doing the degree. So even though I do not have an FRM attached to my name, I can still write FRM and in brackets charter pending. So that still gives a signal that I've completed both levels and I have all the required knowledge,
Right.
which would take, right?
Makes sense, makes sense. All right, Ayush, I think you've covered most of the doubts that any aspirant might have. Any piece of advice for somebody who will be preparing for the exam?
Right. So this is kind of a general advice for all college students or school students who are going to college, is that see, in your initial years, if you work hard, you'll only enjoy the fruits later. So I'll tell you a good story I read on LinkedIn. So there was a guy from Ahmedabad. He was going to his hometown via airport, right? So the flight attendant asked him, he was very impressed that he was from Ahmedabad. So he told him, ki, sir, you worked hard for these past 10-15 years. Now you will be able to enjoy the next 50 years. Now I was enjoying in my initial years. Now I have to work hard for the next 50 years. So see, this is the difference, right? So my advice to everyone is when you are young, you should hustle. Like give the exam. It is a good step you are taking. Be diligent. Try as many things as you can. And पूरा life है chill करने के लिए अभी थोड़ी मेहनत कर लो. You'll only set up your life. So yeah, that is one free gyan I'd like to give everyone.
Great piece of advice. I think many of us hear the same advice from our parents, but it becomes all the more reinforcing if somebody of our age and same generation who's gone through the same experiences says the same thing because he or she has
Correct.
lived through those experiences. Right.